I was standing in business class at JFK Airport, my carry-on packed with everything that mattered, when my phone buzzed one last time. The message was from an unknown number, but I knew exactly who it was. "Please, sweetie, Mum is so sorry. Can you send us some money for Dad's back medicine? We have nothing left." I stared at those words for a long moment, my finger hovering over the delete button. Then I typed back just one sentence. "The bill was paid in full with my childhood. Don't contact me again." I snapped the SIM card in half, dropped it in the nearest trash can, and smiled as I walked toward the gate. But before I tell you how I got here, before I tell you how I went from being my family's doormat to walking away with my head held high, I need you to do something for me. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button. Subscribe, because I share more stories about breaking free from toxic relationships. And comment below to let me know if you've ever had to make an impossible choice between family and your own sanity. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happened next. Now let me take you back to where it all began, because the ending only makes sense when you understand just how deep the knife was buried. I grew up in Westchester County, New York, in one of those neighborhoods where everyone competed to have the nicest lawn and the newest car. My family looked perfect from the outside. My father Richard was a sales executive who wore expensive suits and drove a BMW he couldn't quite afford. My mother Linda spent her days at the country club getting her nails done and gossiping with women who barely tolerated her. And then there was my younger sister Tiffany, who was born when I was 7 years old. From the moment Tiffany arrived, the dynamic in our house shifted in a way I was too young to fully understand. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of kid who could charm anyone with a single smile. My parents doted on her like she was made of spun gold. Meanwhile, I became functionally invisible unless they needed something. By the time I was 10, I was cooking dinner 3 nights a week because Mum was too busy taking Tiffany to beauty pageants. By 12, I was doing everyone's laundry and cleaning the house because Tiffany has delicate skin and can't be exposed to harsh chemicals. Never mind that I was also a child. Never mind that my hands turned red and cracked from the bleach. High school was when the financial abuse really started, though. I didn't have words for it back then. I got a job at 15 working after school at a local diner. I told myself it was for college savings, but the reality was that my parents constantly borrowed money from me. $20 here for Tiffany's makeup, $50 there for her new outfit, $100 for her dance classes. They promised to pay me back. They never did. When it came time to apply for colleges, I worked my arse off. I studied until 2 in the morning most nights, maintaining a perfect GPA while working 20 hours a week and still doing all the household chores. I applied to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all the Ivy League schools, because I knew it was my only shot at a full scholarship. My parents made too much money for me to qualify for need-based aid, but they'd made it clear they wouldn't pay a dime for my education. "Why should we?" Dad had said when I brought it up. "You're smart enough to get scholarships. Tiffany is going to need our help when her time comes. She's not academically inclined." Translation: Tiffany spent her high school years taking selfies and building her Instagram following while I built a future. I got into Harvard with a full academic scholarship. Full ride. Room, board, tuition, everything covered. I cried when I opened that acceptance letter, but they were bittersweet tears because when I ran downstairs to tell my parents, Mum was on the phone bragging to her friends about Tiffany's latest TikTok going viral. The 4 years I spent at Harvard were the best and worst of my life. Best because for the first time I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence and hard work. I found professors who mentored me, friends who actually cared about my well-being, and a sense of purpose I'd never felt at home. Worst because I was constantly broke. My scholarship covered tuition and housing, but I still needed money for food, books, and basic necessities. I worked 3 part-time jobs throughout college. I tutored rich kids in economics, I worked the late shift at the library, and I did freelance accounting for small businesses. Every penny I made went into a savings account I'd set up when I turned 18. That account was my escape fund, my ticket to freedom after graduation. I deposited money, religiously watching the balance grow. 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. By senior year, I had almost $23,000 saved. I'd also managed to keep this account secret from my family, or so I thought. I'd made the mistake early in college of adding my mother as a joint account holder at her insistence. "Just in case of emergencies, honey," she'd said. "What if something happens to you and we need to access funds?" I was 18 and naive enough to think she actually cared about my welfare. Meanwhile, back home, Tiffany was living her best life. She'd graduated high school with a 2.3 GPA and no plans for college. Instead, she decided to become a content creator. My parents were thrilled. They funded her entire operation. Professional camera equipment, ring lights, a new wardrobe for outfit posts, even a small studio apartment in Manhattan so she could be closer to opportunities. Every time I came home for breaks, the contrast was glaring. Tiffany had everything, a new iPhone every year, designer clothes, a makeup collection that probably cost more than my entire college education would have without the scholarship. And me, I was still wearing the same 3 outfits I'd owned since high school, stretched thin from too many washes. But I kept my head down. I told myself it would all be worth it after graduation. I'd accepted a position as a junior financial analyst at a prestigious firm in Manhattan, starting 2 weeks after graduation. The salary was good enough to get my own apartment and finally be independent. I just had to make it through one more ceremony, one more family obligation, and then I'd be free. Graduation day at Harvard was supposed to be the pinnacle of my achievement. I'd graduated summa cum laude, top of my class, in the economics department. I'd been selected to give the valedictorian speech to over 2,000 people in Harvard Yard. My professors had written me glowing recommendations. I'd even been accepted into Harvard Business School for my MBA, though I planned to defer for a few years to work first. The morning of graduation, I was nervous but excited. I put on my cap and gown, made sure my speech notes were in order, and headed to the venue early. The ceremony was set to begin at 10 in the morning. By 9:30, I was backstage rehearsing my speech one final time. 9:45 came, no sign of my family. I texted my mum. "Where are you guys? Ceremony starts in 15 minutes. No response. 10 o'clock. The ceremony began. I watched from backstage as families filled the seats, cameras ready, faces beaming with pride. The section where my family was supposed to sit remained conspicuously empty. 10:30. It was almost time for my speech. My phone buzzed. Finally, a text from Tiffany. "Ugh, Dad made us stop for coffee. Mom needed Starbucks. We're like 20 minutes away. Wait for us." Wait for them. At my own graduation. At the moment, I was supposed to give the most important speech of my life. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I pushed it down. I'd become an expert at pushing things down. At 10:45, I walked onto the stage. The dean introduced me, listing my achievements, my honours, my awards. The audience applauded. I stepped up to the microphone and began my speech about perseverance, about overcoming obstacles, about believing in yourself when no one else does. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was 3 minutes into my 7-minute speech when I heard it. A commotion at the back of the hall, loud voices, the sound of folding chairs scraping against the floor. I looked up from my notes and saw them. My family finally arriving nearly an hour late. But they weren't trying to be discreet. Oh no. My father, in his too tight polo shirt and sunglasses, was pushing past seated families, demanding they move so he could get to our reserved section. My mother, in heels too high for a grassy outdoor venue, was tottering behind him, her massive designer purse knocking into people's heads. And Tiffany. Tiffany was live streaming the whole thing on her phone, her voice carrying across the formerly respectful silence. "Oh my God, you guys, we're so late. This is crazy. Look at all these people in these dorky robes." 2,000 people turned to look. I stood at the microphone, my carefully crafted speech forgotten, watching my family make a spectacle of themselves at the most important moment of my life. I tried to continue. I really did. But my voice had lost its conviction. I rushed through the last few paragraphs, my face burning with humiliation, and practically ran off the stage as soon as I could. The next part of the ceremony was the actual diploma distribution. When they called my name, Emily Richardson, summa cum laude economics. I walked across the stage with my head held high. I'd earned this, even if my family had turned it into a circus. I shook the dean's hand. I posed for the official photo. I accepted my diploma in its leather folder. and then I walked down the steps heading back to my seat, trying to pretend the whispers and stares weren't about me. That's when I saw Tiffany standing at the edge of the aisle, still live streaming. She was wearing a hot pink crop top and ripped jeans to a formal graduation ceremony. As I passed, she stage whispered into her phone loud enough for everyone around us to hear. "That's my sister. Look at that gown. So basic, right? Like they couldn't make them cute. I could never wear something that frumpy." I kept walking. Just a few more hours, I told myself. Then you never have to see them again. But I was wrong, because the worst was yet to come. After the ceremony, there was a reception in Harvard Yard. Families took photos, professors congratulated students, everyone was celebrating. I found my family near the refreshment table. Tiffany was still on her phone. Mum was complaining about the heat. Dad was checking his watch. "Hey guys," I said, trying to sound normal. "Thanks for coming. I know you had a long drive." "Yeah, well, we almost didn't make it at all," Dad said without looking at me. "Your mother took forever getting ready, and then we hit traffic." No apology, no acknowledgement that they'd disrupted my speech. "Can we take some family photos?" I asked. Mum sighed heavily. "Honey, it's really hot out here and my makeup is melting. Maybe just a quick one." We took exactly 3 photos. In all of them, Tiffany is looking at her phone. In 2 of them, Dad is checking his watch. Only Mum is actually looking at the camera, and even she couldn't manage a genuine smile. "Okay, can we go now?" Tiffany whined. "I have an appointment at 2. "What appointment?" I asked. "Lip filler touch-up," she said casually, as if this was completely normal. My injector only had 1 slot available today, and I absolutely cannot miss it. My lips are looking so thin in my recent posts. I stared at her. "Are you serious? This is my graduation from Harvard. Can't your appointment wait?" That's when Dad's face turned red. That particular shade of crimson I'd learned to fear as a child. "Watch your tone," he snapped. "Your sister's appointment is important. She has sponsors who expect her to look a certain way. This affects her income." "And my graduation doesn't matter." The words came out before I could stop them. "Don't be dramatic," Mum cut in. "We came, didn't we? We sat through your little speech. What more do you want?" What more did I want? I wanted them to be proud of me. I wanted them to acknowledge that I'd just accomplished something incredible. I wanted them to treat this day as if it mattered even half as much as Tiffany's Instagram aesthetics. But before I could say any of that, Dad grabbed my arm, hard. His fingers dug into my bicep through my graduation gown. "We're leaving, now. Tiffany's appointment is at 2 and it's already 12:30. We need to drive her into the city." "I'm not going," I said, trying to pull my arm back. "I have plans with my friends. There's a dinner tonight for all the honours graduates." "Cancel it," Dad ordered. "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. "This is my day. I've worked for 4 years for this. I'm not leaving." That's when it happened. Right there in Harvard Yard, surrounded by hundreds of families, professors and students, my father raised his hand and slapped me across the face. The sound echoed across the courtyard. Conversations stopped. People turned to stare. My cheek exploded with heat and pain. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my face. For a moment, everything went silent. I could see my professors in the distance, their expressions shifting from shock to concern. I could see my friends starting to move toward me. I could see the dean, the same man who'd just praised me on stage, standing frozen in disbelief. And then I heard it, Tiffany's laugh, that high-pitched giggle she'd perfected for her videos. She had her phone out, still live streaming, and she was zooming in on my face. "Oh my God, you guys, this is insane. Epic family drama at Harvard. Look at her face. It's so red." Mum grabbed my other arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. "You've embarrassed us enough, causing a scene at your own graduation. Get in the car, now." "I'm 22 years old," I said, my voice shaking. "You can't make me do anything." Dad leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. "That diploma in your hand, that fancy degree means nothing in the real world. You think you're so smart, you're about to find out how the world really works. Now get in the goddamn car before I really give you something to cry about." The threat was clear. And even though I was an adult, even though I was surrounded by people, even though I knew objectively that I didn't have to obey, 22 years of conditioning kicked in, I was programmed to submit. I followed them to the parking lot. My friends called after me, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't let them see me cry. The 3-hour drive back to Westchester was silent. I sat in the back seat, my graduation gown still on my diploma clutched in my lap, watching the Massachusetts countryside blur past the window. Tiffany sat next to me, editing her live stream footage, giggling to herself. When we finally pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, I went straight to my old bedroom and closed the door. I changed out of my gown, carefully hanging it in the closet. I took off my cap and put it on the shelf. I placed my diploma on the desk. Then I went to the bathroom and looked at my face in the mirror. The right side was red and swollen where he'd hit me. By tomorrow it would be a bruise. I heard noise from downstairs. Laughter. Music. I crept to the top of the stairs and looked down into the living room. They were having a party. Balloons, streamers, a cake on the table. For a wild moment I thought maybe they'd planned a surprise graduation party for me after all. But then I saw the banner. Congratulations, Tiffany, 10K followers. They were celebrating her Instagram milestone. On my graduation day, I went back to my room and locked the door. That's when I remembered I needed to check my bank account. My plan had been to use some of my savings to get my own apartment in Manhattan before starting my new job. I'd been looking at studios, nothing fancy, just something small and safe where I could finally be independent. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my online banking. The page loaded. Account balance, owns. I blinked, refreshed the page. Same thing, 0. There had to be a mistake. There was over $23,000 in that account last week. I clicked on the transaction history. 3 days ago, withdrawal 23,487, memo wire transfer to West Hills Auto Luxury. My hands started shaking. I ran downstairs, not caring any more about the party. I found Mum in the kitchen arranging cupcakes on a platter. Mum, what happened to my bank account? Where's my money? She didn't even look up. Oh, that. I withdrew it to buy Tiffany's new car. She needed something nice for her content. Can't have her showing up to brand events in that old Honda. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. That was my money. I worked for 4 years to save that. You stole from me. Now she looked up annoyed. Don't be so dramatic. It's not stealing when it's family. You'll make plenty of money at your new job. You can save up again. Tiffany needed it now. I needed it now. I need that money for my apartment. I start work in 2 weeks. Then I guess you'll have to stay here a bit longer, she said with a shrug. Really, Emily, you're being so selfish. Your sister is building a career. Do you know how hard it is to be an influencer? The competition is fierce. I felt something rising in my chest. Anger. Pure hot anger that I'd been pushing down for years. She's not an influencer. She posts selfies. I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard. And you bought her a car with my money on my graduation day. Lower your voice, Mom hissed. You're ruining Tiffany's party. Ruining? I'm ruining something. I was getting louder. I couldn't help it. You ruined my graduation. Dad hit me in front of everyone, and now you've stolen my money. That's when Dad appeared in the doorway. He must have heard me shouting. What's all this noise about? She's upset about the car, Mum said, as if I was being unreasonable. Dad's face hardened. That money was in a joint account with your mother. Legally, it was as much hers as yours. She had every right to withdraw it. But it was my money. I earned it. And now it's gone. Deal with it. He moved closer, his voice dropping to that dangerous tone I knew too well. Now let me make something very clear to you. You're going to stop this tantrum right now. You're going to go upstairs, put on a smile, and come down here and celebrate your sister's achievement. Because unlike your fancy degree, her followers actually translate to real income. I have a job lined up, I said. A real job. I start in 2 weeks. About that, he said, pulling out his phone. He tapped a few times, then turned the screen to face me. It was an email to my new employer. From him. I sent this morning. Told them you'd had a family emergency and would need to delay your start date by at least 6 months. My blood ran cold. Why would you do that? Because you owe us, he said simply. Do you have any idea how much it cost to raise you? Feed you, house you for 18 years. You think that scholarship covered everything? Your mother and I have debts. Serious debts. And you're going to help us pay them off before you go running off to play career woman. That's not how it works, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Oh, but it is. He smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. See, here's the thing. We've taken out several credit cards in your name over the years. Started when you were 16. Your credit score is excellent, by the way. We also put this house's second mortgage in your name, and Tiffany's student loans. Technically, they're yours too. We used your social security number. The room started spinning. That's illegal. That's identity theft. That's family, Dad corrected. And if you want to make a big deal about it, if you want to report us or try to get those debts cleared, I'll make sure that new employer of yours knows exactly what kind of person you are. someone who falsifies loan documents, someone with a criminal record. Because that's what you'll have if you report this, you understand. We'll press charges against you for fraud. We have documentation showing you signed for everything. I never signed anything, I whispered. You sure about that? Mum chimed in. Because we have your signature on file at the bank, on loan papers, on credit card applications, all very official. They'd been forging my signature. For years I was trapped. So here's what's going to happen, Dad continued. You're going to stay here. You're going to get a local job and start paying down these debts. Once they're cleared, maybe in a few years, you can think about moving out. But until then, you belong to us. I looked between them, my parents, the people who were supposed to protect me. They'd systematically destroyed my future, stolen my money, and were now holding me hostage with fraudulent debt. And the worst part, they genuinely seemed to think this was reasonable. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said quietly. I understand. Relief washed over Dad's face. Good, I knew you'd be sensible about this. Now go get changed. We're cutting the cake in 20 minutes. I went upstairs. I changed into clean clothes. I washed my face, hiding the bruise with makeup, and then I opened my laptop. My roommate at Harvard, David, was the son of a prominent Manhattan lawyer. We'd stayed close, and I'd helped him pass economics when he'd been in danger of failing. He'd told me once, half-jokingly, that if I ever needed legal help, his dad would take my case pro bono. I'd thought he was being nice. Now I was praying he'd meant it. I typed out an email explaining everything. The stolen money, the identity theft, the forged signatures, the threats. I attached screenshots of my bank account photos of my graduation diploma and the bruise on my face and every document I could find that showed my parents' fraud. I hit send. Then I went downstairs, plastered a smile on my face and sang happy birthday to my sister while she blew out candles on a cake that probably cost more than my monthly food budget at Harvard. I played the game for exactly 1 week. I became the perfect daughter. Obedient, quiet, helpful. I cooked every meal. I cleaned the house. I complimented Tiffany on her outfits. I even helped Mum pick out new curtains for the living room. They relaxed. They stopped watching me so closely. They actually started to believe I'd given up. What they didn't know was that David's father, Robert Chen, had gotten my email within an hour. He'd immediately recognised it as a serious case of financial abuse and identity theft. He'd taken it to a colleague who specialised in financial fraud. Together they'd started building a case. They requested my credit report. It was worse than I'd imagined. 6 credit cards I'd never applied for all maxed out. A car loan for Dad's BMW. The second mortgage on the house. Even a personal loan for $50,000 that had gone to fund Tiffany's influencer career, including that studio apartment in Manhattan. Total debt in my name, $287,000. I was 22 years old, had never signed for any of it, and was legally responsible for nearly $300,000 of debt. But here's the thing about financial fraud. It's a federal crime. And when Mr. Chen's team started pulling court documents, they found something beautiful. My parents had been sloppy. In several instances, they'd forged my signature while I was provably in another state. At Harvard, with time-stamped photos, class attendance records, even dorm security footage. It wasn't just fraud. It was prosecutable, ironclad, undeniable fraud. Mr. Chen worked fast. Within 3 days, he'd prepared an evidence package. Within 5 days, he'd filed reports with the Federal Trade Commission, the local police, and the IRS. Within a week, he'd gotten court orders to freeze all the fraudulent accounts and begin the process of clearing them from my name. But we needed one more thing, confession on record, proof that my parents knew what they were doing. That's where I came in. On day 8 of my Perfect Daughter Act, I sat down with my parents in the living room. I told them I'd been thinking about their plan. I said I wanted to be responsible to do right by family. I asked if we could sit down and review all the debts together so I could understand what I needed to pay off. They were so relieved that I was being reasonable that they pulled out every document. They walked me through each credit card, each loan, explaining matter-of-factly how they'd opened them, how much they'd spent when they expected me to pay them back. My phone was recording the entire conversation from my pocket. By the end of that meeting, I had 90 minutes of audio of my parents openly admitting to identity theft, forgery, and financial fraud. Mr. Chen was thrilled, but I wasn't done yet, because there was one more piece to this puzzle. Tiffany was having a birthday party, her 21st, and my parents were going all out. They'd rented a small event space, hired a DJ, bought premium liquor, even brought in an ice sculpture. The guest list included all of Tiffany's influencer friends, plus various relatives and family friends that Dad wanted to impress for networking purposes. The party was going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000. Money my parents didn't have, money they planned to put on yet another fraudulent credit card in my name. Perfect. I spent the next week being even more helpful. I helped Mum plan the menu. I suggested decorations. I even helped Tiffany pick out her outfit, a ridiculous sequined mini dress that cost $1,200. When Tiffany complained that she needed a new car for her birthday because the convertible Mom had bought her with my savings wasn't aesthetic enough, I suggested she make a birthday wish during her speech. Speech? Tiffany wrinkled her nose. Yeah, you know when you thank everyone for coming, you should do a little speech. Everyone does that at 21st birthday parties. It's expected. The idea appealed to her vanity. She started rehearsing immediately. The party was on a Saturday night. The venue was packed with people, most of whom I'd never met. Tiffany's influencer friends were all there, phones out, documenting everything for content. My parents were in their element, playing the role of proud, generous parents. I wore a simple black dress and stayed in the background, helping set up, making sure everything ran smoothly. The perfect supportive sister. At 8 o'clock, the DJ lowered the music. Dad took the microphone for the toast. Everyone, thank you so much for coming tonight to celebrate our baby girl's 21st birthday. Tiffany, sweetheart, we are so proud of the young woman you've become. You're beautiful, talented, and you're going places. To Tiffany. Everyone raised their glasses. Tiffany beamed, soaking up the attention. Then Dad handed her the microphone for her speech. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about how hard she'd worked on her brand. She mentioned her follower count 3 times. She thanked Mum and Dad for their unwavering support and generosity. Then just as she was about to wrap up, I stepped forward. Actually, before you finish, I have a surprise for everyone. Tiffany looked confused. Mum's eyes narrowed. But they couldn't stop me without causing a scene, and causing a scene was the last thing they wanted with this crowd. I took the microphone from Tiffany's hand. Hi everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Emily, Tiffany's older sister. I just graduated from Harvard a couple weeks ago. Polite applause. Tiffany's friends looked bored. I wanted to take a moment tonight to talk about family, about what it means to support each other, about sacrifice and love. I could see Dad's face starting to redden. Mum was mouthing, "Sit down," at me. You see, my parents taught me a lot about sacrifice. They taught me that family means putting others first no matter what. They taught me that sometimes you have to give up everything you have for the people you love. I walked over to the DJ booth and plugged my laptop into the projection system. The large screen that had been showing a slideshow of Tiffany's Instagram photos went black. So I wanted to share with all of you just how much my family has sacrificed for Tiffany's success. I clicked play. The video started with footage from my Harvard graduation. Specifically the moment when my father slapped me in front of 2,000 people. The audio was crystal clear. You could hear the impact. You could hear Tiffany laughing and narrating for her live stream. You could see my mother's face completely devoid of sympathy. The room went silent. People's faces shifted from confusion to shock to horror. But I wasn't finished. The next slide was a bank statement. My savings account showing 23,487, then the withdrawal, then the zero balance. This was my college savings. 4 years of working multiple jobs, every penny saved. My mother withdrew it 3 days before my graduation to buy Tiffany a car, without asking, without telling me, on what was supposed to be the proudest day of my life. Dad was moving towards me now, but 2 of Mr. Chen's associates who I'd invited as my friends blocked his path. But that's just money, right? Families borrow from each other. That's what my mother told me. Next slide, a credit report, my name at the top, nearly $300,000 in debt. This is my credit report. I'm 22 years old. I've never applied for a credit card in my life. I've never taken out a loan, yet somehow I'm responsible for $287,000 in debt. Gasps around the room. Tiffany's face had gone pale. Want to know how my parents committed identity theft? They opened credit cards in my name starting when I was 16. They took out loans in my name. They put their car, their mortgage, even my sister's career expenses in my name, all without my knowledge or consent. The next slide was the legal definition of identity theft from the Federal Trade Commission website. Identity theft is a federal crime punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Mum was crying now, real tears or fake, I couldn't tell. But here's the beautiful thing about the justice system. I reported it, the FBI is investigating, the IRS is investigating. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, all those fraudulent accounts have been frozen and flagged for criminal prosecution. I clicked to the next slide. Court documents, official seals, legal terminology that most people in the room probably didn't understand, but they understood the official stamps and signatures. These are court orders clearing me of all debt. As of today, I am financially free. I paused, letting that sink in. But there's more. You see, when you commit fraud, you don't just lose the money, you lose everything. Final slide, property seizure notices, asset liquidation orders. My parents' house is being seized to pay back the debt. Their cars are being repossessed, their bank accounts are frozen. And because they used my identity to fund my sister's lifestyle, every purchase made with those fraudulent funds is subject to asset recovery. I looked directly at Tiffany. That convertible technically bought with stolen funds. The police are outside right now with a tow truck. Your apartment in Manhattan lease is in default as of tomorrow. Your designer wardrobe paid for with fraud. It's all being seized. Tiffany let out a sound like a wounded animal. How could you do this? Mum screamed. We're your family. Exactly, I said calmly. You're my family, and this is what you did to me. You stole my childhood, my money, my graduation, my future. You hit me. You humiliated me. You trapped me. All for what? Instagram followers. A fancy car. Status. I turned to address the room full of guests, many of whom were recording this on their phones now. So let this be a lesson. Real success isn't measured in followers or cars or appearances. It's measured in integrity, in hard work, in treating people with basic human decency. 3 things my parents never taught me, but 3 things I learned anyway. I set the microphone down on the table. Outside I could hear police sirens, right on schedule. The authorities are here to speak with Richard and Linda Richardson about charges of identity theft, wire fraud, and filing false financial documents. I suggest everyone else leave while they can. Chaos erupted. Guests scrambled for the exits. Tiffany was screaming. Mum had collapsed dramatically into a chair. Dad tried one last time to rush at me, but the police officers entering the venue stopped him. I walked out of that party with my head held high, Mr. Chen on one side and David on the other. Behind me I could hear my father being read his Miranda rights. I could hear Tiffany wailing about her car. I could hear my mother begging someone, anyone, to help them. I didn't look back. The next month was a whirlwind. My parents were formally charged with identity theft and fraud. They pleaded guilty as part of a deal to avoid prison time, but they had to pay massive fines and restitution. To do that, they sold the house. They sold both cars. They liquidated every asset they had. They ended up in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a rough neighbourhood, both working retail jobs to make ends meet. Dad, who'd always prided himself on his fancy sales executive title, was now stocking shelves at a big box store. Mum, who'd spent 20 years getting her nails done weekly at the country club, was working as a cashier at a discount grocery chain. Tiffany had it worst in some ways. When the story broke online thanks to all those guests recording my speech, she became infamous. Not famous. Infamous. Her follower count actually went up initially, but they were all hate followers. People leaving comments about how she was a spoiled brat who'd destroyed her sister's life. Brands dropped her. Sponsorships evaporated. Within 2 weeks, she'd deleted all her social media accounts. She got a job at a nail salon. The same nail salon where she'd made me wait for her for 3 hours that one time. She was doing manicures for minimum wage plus tips, serving women who'd seen the viral videos and sometimes recognised her. I heard she cried every day for the first month. As for me, I called my employer and explained the situation. Turns out they'd received my father's email but had been suspicious because it came from a personal email address, not my official Harvard account. When I told them what had happened, they were sympathetic. They actually moved my start date up and gave me a signing bonus to help me get settled. I found a small studio apartment in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Paid for with my own money from my own salary. I decorated it myself, filled it with books and plants and all the things I'd never been allowed to have growing up. I made friends at work, real friends, who invited me to brunches and happy hours and asked about my day because they genuinely cared, not because they wanted something from me. I started therapy to work through everything. I learnt that what I'd experienced had a name: financial abuse. that I wasn't crazy or selfish or ungrateful. I was a survivor. 6 months after my graduation, I got my MBA acceptance letter from Harvard again. I'd deferred, but they still wanted me. This time I had the money saved to support myself. This time no one had access to my accounts but me. I thought about my parents sometimes, about whether I'd been too harsh, whether I should have tried to work things out privately instead of exposing them publicly, whether family loyalty should have mattered more than justice. But then I'd remember that slap, that moment in Harvard Yard when my own father hit me in front of everyone I'd worked so hard to impress. I'd remember opening my bank account and seeing zero. I'd remember him threatening to destroy my career if I didn't comply. I'd remember 22 years of being invisible unless they needed something. And I'd remember that love isn't supposed to hurt. Family isn't supposed to steal. Parents aren't supposed to sacrifice their children for their golden child's Instagram aesthetic. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. 1 year after my graduation, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emily, it's Mum." I didn't respond, just waited. "I know you don't want to talk to us, I understand. But your father, he hurt his back at work. He can't afford the medical bills. We were hoping maybe you could help us out. Just a little. We're family." There it was. Even after everything, they still thought they could use me. Still thought family was a weapon they could wield to get what they wanted. "No," I said simply. "But we're your parents. We raised you. You owe us." "I don't owe you anything. You stole from me. You abused me. You nearly destroyed my life. The fact that you're suffering now, that's called consequences. How can you be so cold? We're struggling." Good. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe Tiffany will learn that life isn't just pretty pictures and free money. Maybe you'll all finally understand what I lived through for 22 years. But we have nothing. "That's more than you left me with. Goodbye." I hung up. I blocked the number. And I went back to my life, my real life, the one I'd built from nothing by myself without them. Some people will tell you that you should forgive family no matter what. That blood is thicker than water, that you only get one mum and dad. Those people have never been slapped at their own graduation. They've never had their entire savings stolen. They've never been held hostage by identity theft. They've never been told their accomplishments don't matter while their siblings' social media gets celebrated. Family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down. Love is supposed to be supportive, not suffocating. If someone treats you like a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be cherished, they don't deserve access to your life. I don't care if they're related to you by blood. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even if that someone else's family. I'm 23 now. I work at a job I love. I live in an apartment I pay for myself. I have friends who actually care about me. I'm pursuing my MBA. I'm dating someone kind and supportive who thinks my Harvard degree is impressive, not embarrassing. I'm building a life on my own terms. And the best part, I'm happy. Genuinely, authentically happy in a way I never was when I was trying to earn my family's love and approval. Because here's what I finally learned. You can't earn something that should be freely given. Parents should love their children unconditionally, not as conditional prizes for obedience. Siblings should support each other, not compete for scraps of parental attention. Family should be your safe place, not your battlefield. And if your family can't be that, you're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to thrive without them. The bill for my childhood was paid in full with 22 years of emotional labour, financial exploitation and systematic abuse. I don't owe them another penny. I don't owe them my forgiveness. I don't owe them a relationship. I owe myself the life I always deserved, and now finally I'm living it. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? How did you handle it? Are you still struggling with a toxic family dynamic? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find the courage to make their own hard choice. And if this story resonated with you, if it helped you feel less alone in your struggle, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about breaking free from toxic relationships and building the life you deserve. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to put themselves first. Remember, you are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not ungrateful for expecting basic respect. You are not a bad person for walking away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. You deserve better, and it's never too late to claim the life you've always wanted.